Alex, we got Jens on the line here. What do you want to ask him?
Do you think it's the right approach to just submit LOIs on deals that I don't necessarily believe I can get or close? Is that a right approach, or am I wasting people's time by doing that?
Maybe call the broker and said, hey, I'm pretty far apart. Is there any value in submitting an LOI now, or am I just wasting everybody's time, right? Because if you're way too far, the broker's going to say, no, we already have offers that are much closer to the asking price. Then maybe you are wasting your time, right? So, but if you feel like you're competitive, you may be in $100,000 from what other people are, then it's probably worth it, because maybe they'll go for, best and final or something to that effect, right?
First, we'll introduce you to Jens. He's originally from Denmark, hence the pronunciation of his name, but he's lived in the United States since 1996. He's currently owner or co-owner of 85 apartment units and mobile home lots in New Mexico and Colorado. And he's also a general partner in 5 syndications, totaling 885 units. He's also passively invested in 16 syndications or private investments, spanning over 800 apartment units, 2,000 mobile home park lots, and 6,000 self-storage units, plus a handful of mortgage note funds and private money lending. His mission is to get more people to invest in private placements for the strong cash flow and equity growth. And his company's mission is to open doors to your secure financial future through multifamily investing. All right, Jens, that said, welcome to the show today. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Brian. How are you?
Doing great, thanks. So, it's really interesting. I listened to a couple podcasts with you on it in the last week, and I'm super excited to talk with you. I think you got a lot of interesting things to discuss today. So, that said, would you please give everybody an idea of who you are, and a little bit about your background and your history?
Absolutely. So people maybe detect a little bit of an accent, and my name being Jens Nielsen, it kind of, probably gives a clue that I wasn't born in this country. And I was born and raised in Denmark, left when I was 23 years old, moved to London, England, which was a bit of a shock trying to learn English and also go to a big city like that. And then in 1996, I relocated to the US, and I've been here ever since, basically moved from the East Coast, actually close to where you are now, Brian, and then to the west to New Mexico, 8 years in Colorado, and now back in New Mexico. So that's kind of been my moving around this country. I have a long history, both in telecommunication and IT. That was essentially how I got started in business and my work. Did that for a long time. And then started real estate investing about 5 years ago. I one day realized that I had to work another 20 years in my IT job if I ever wanted to retire. And as I was looking around, real estate was like the one thing that resonated with me as a potential opportunity to apply some of my skills, some of my passions outside of my IT job. So that was just kind of, very quickly about who I am and where I came from, I guess.
Nice. Now your moves throughout the country, were those all job related, or was there another reason for that?
Mainly, my IT job related. I remember my wife was working down in Bethesda and driving through crazy traffic every day. And one day she comes home and is like, I can't stand this anymore. We need to move. I was like, okay.
Oh, all right.
And so we moved to Albuquerque because she has some family out here. And that was just such a huge change, open spaces and much less traffic and everything.
Yeah.
So,
And sunny skies every day. Wow.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my commute every day, and actually, fortunately, we're teleworking. I'm at the Pentagon, but I drive through Bethesda every day to get to the Pentagon. And you guys would actually be surprised at how clear the roads are right now. I mean, most days I can get, the 20 or so miles from my house to the Pentagon without any significant slowdowns, which, a year ago was absolutely unthinkable. So,
sure.
But anyway, I mean, reducing traffic, I don't know if I'd want to have another epidemic like that just to get that traffic reduction, but that's, I guess, one of the silver linings. But cool. So you got into investing in real estate. Did you start with apartments, or did you do what a lot of people do and start with like single families?
So I looked at single families. Where I was living, there wasn't really a small town, and there wasn't really any apartments or anything that really could cash flow, expensive market. So I started looking outside my local market, and I started looking at a couple of single families. I was like, man, this is just going to take too long to buy one single family after the other. So I decided to focus on Albuquerque and said, okay, that looks like it's a bigger market, but I got just involved with some other people who were already doing apartments, and they say, no, don't skip the whole single family route, just go straight to apartments. And that's what I did. And that was, a couple of fourplexes early on, because, the financing is easy and you can, and so forth. So that's kind of how I got started. I just didn't feel like single family was going to serve me too well.
Yeah, you don't know. I was fortunate to get the same advice from somebody, and it was just, hey, I had a handful of single family, and I was looking to jump into multifamily. And I think like a lot of people who are listening, the idea was, okay, I've done a proof of concept with a couple single family units. Okay, next step up is to buy a fourplex or to buy a sixplex or to buy an eightplex. But I was fortunate to have somebody show me that you can go from zero to, whatever number you want to begin with. So what's you talked a little bit about your why. You said you wanted to scale and get out of basically the rat race. What is there more to your why? I mean, what is your big burning why?
Yeah, and I, maybe I'll go into that a little bit. So what really happened to me, right? I had always been focused on myself, not in necessarily a selfish way, but always like, how can I be better and how can I show other people that I'm worthy of everything. And I spent so many years actually racing bicycles, mountain bikes and road bikes, because that was a way for me to express my competitiveness, my desire to actually put something out into the world. And that served me well for a long time. But then like a few years ago, I had this terrible crash and I ended up in a hospital with internal bleeding, and crashed my kidney through this, crushed my kidney really from this crash. And I was lying in this hospital bed. I was like, oh my God, what have I been doing? By this time, I'm in my late 40s. Why am I still doing this crazy stuff? Right.
Yeah.
And I felt like I had not really looked out into the world and see where can I add value beyond focusing on myself. And there was just a bit of a realization there that, did I really matter? Did I really apply myself to helping others, to bring something to the community? So the why really came from that. Well, first of all, getting out of my job, but also beyond that, helping people to get into apartments, both as tenants and also as investors, and just build, really apply myself in a much bigger way that I had up until that point. So that was kind of the why. It was like a serious injury that kind of was a very, wake up call to me at that point, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think everybody has, a slightly different trajectory, obviously. And, just like my comments on the epidemic, I wouldn't wish, a serious injury on anybody. But I think a lot of people hit a low point in life, whatever causes it, and it causes them to reflect and kind of rechart a course, which part of the reason why adversity is so important in our lives. We go through the adversity, we come out stronger. And then, another thing that I got from what you said is, one great thing about multifamily investing is you help a lot of people. You're providing housing for people, and on the same side, you're providing investment opportunities to help people to become better off financially. So anyway, good for you. And are you back on your bicycle, at least recreationally? Okay, good.
Yeah, no, I luckily recovered and my kidney healed up and everything. So, I'm good, but also my focus changed, right? Because I realized, I'm not getting stronger physically, but I have so much more to give from a experience and mental fortitude and just personal growth. That's where my focus really is now.
Well, from a biking perspective, I imagine Santa Fe has a lot of trails and a lot of wide open roads. So
that's right. Yeah,
probably a really good spot to keep doing that as a hobby now, and less competitively. But all right, so let's talk about some of the deals you've done. I know you said you're focused in Albuquerque, but if you have a favorite that you want to talk about, let's talk about it.
We actually own 75 units in Albuquerque now. Then we've syndicated deals throughout the country. But there's one deal that kind of stands out as a little bit of my darling now, especially after, and I'll kind of share the story. It's a deal we bought. It's coming up on 3 years since we bought 38 units, B- C+ area. But the property was pretty run down, and the owner or the seller had not put much money into it. So the roofs were leaking. There was all kinds of problems. So we bought this property for $1.2 million and put another $600,000 into it, roof, stucco, decking, and turned a bunch of the units, right? So we were in it, and we had a lot of problems along the way. Like I remember my partner, who was also my property manager, he's like, yeah, We have leaks in the floor. So the
Ooh.
concrete floors were warm because water was leaking underneath the slab, right? These are
Yep.
just like, oh man. So jackhammer out, right? And start tearing out. And we realized the copper tubing in the ground hadn't
No.
been installed properly, 20, 30, whatever, 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to like replumb quite a few of the apartments with PEX plumbing in the soffits and stuff like that. So that was a rough couple of months there, and we had quite a few units down because we were redoing all that stuff and like overrunning budget. And my partners were also, what is going on here, right?
Yeah.
But and it's interesting, right? So we kind of got it stabilized right in the beginning of COVID, so about a year ago. We're like, oh man, what is this going to mean now? But actually, it's done extremely well this past year, and it's been highly occupied, and we just are actually in the process of refinancing it right now. It just appraised for $2.5 million, right? So
Nice.
we're in it for 1.8, and it's worth 2.5, right? So these headaches and challenges and everything else are, looking back, were worth it. They didn't seem so great when we were in the middle of it all, right?
Oh yeah.
But
And
that's where I think. Oh, go ahead.
yeah, I was gonna say I love that you're talking about the bad side, because a lot of people will always talk about the upside and they don't talk about a lot of the work that goes in that's involved in getting there. But so you made it through some renovations, a lot of slab leaks, and right now you're starting to see the fruits of the labors. The refinance. Now, did you say you were refinancing, or did I make that up?
No, we are refinancing.
Okay,
Yeah,
good.
it appraised at 2.5, and we're not going to
Nice.
pull. I think we'll go pretty low leverage too, just so
Mhm.
we have a little bit of room there. And so there were some dark times,
Oh yeah.
a year ago. But also, I think again, the key point here is like if you keep your eyes on the ball and you just realize, well, we can work through these problems and
Yeah.
just
Now,
stay on top of it, right?
just curious. I mean, interest rates are lower now than they were 3 years ago. Are you refinancing into a better rate as well?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I think we were at 5 or a little over 5% interest, and now it's 3.5 or something.
Wow.
We're still going with a local bank. We could probably go agency, but we have such a good relationship with this bank, and we feel like it's worth taking recourse debt on this deal because it's we're just a JV partnership there. So
Yeah. And I like that as well. I mean, a lot of people, I've heard people say never do recourse debt. Can you talk a little bit about what went into the decision for you guys to actually do a recourse loan?
well, when we first bought it, that was probably the only possibility we had because it was almost like a hybrid buy with construction money built into it. So that was the only option we had back then. But also, if you don't believe in the deal to take on that risk personally, why should you do this deal and take other people's money in and risk it? So, I mean, I know that's not, if you have a $10 million loan and it's recourse, that's a huge challenge. But still, I guess you have to kind of think about this. Would I do this deal if it was recourse, right? And if you wouldn't, then you have to really look at why wouldn't I, right? It's because you don't trust the deal, because you don't trust your underwriting, you're concerned about it. And that creates a moral challenge there, I think.
Yeah. And looking at it, I mean, we have, let's see, 8 properties, 8 loans, and 3 of the 8 are recourse loans, so it's something that we look at as one of many risk factors. I don't think it's the determining risk factor in anything, but if you're confident in the property and you're confident in your ability to the property operational or make it profitable, it's just a single risk factor in the dozens of risk factors that you're weighing and dozens of inputs that you're looking over to make sure it's going to work out.
Absolutely.
So, well, good. And you're staying with the same lender because of relationship. Have you guys done a lot of loans with this lender?
Yeah, I have, this is like 3 or 4 loans with this lender, and my partner has dozens, right? So we have such a great relationship with them, and we have never any problems getting any loans approved and all that. So there's that. And we've been getting 30-year amortization on older properties through these guys. So they always treat us really well, and feel like that's a good relationship to maintain.
Yeah. Yeah. And you bring up a good point there. I mean, maybe the property could fit into agency loans or agency debt, and you're going with that because of the relationship, and it just makes it easier. And another point is a lot of times your small community banks or your local credit unions will have much more flexible terms than your agency debt. I mean, agency debt is probably the most restrictive on terms and conditions. I mean, but your local credit unions a lot of times will dictate their own. Whatever their president or their loan officer decides is worth the risk, they'll do.
Yeah.
So
Especially around repayment and all that.
yeah,
It's a huge challenge on agency debt,
yeah,
That's good.
The first one, yeah, there's always a lot of learning on that one. Incidentally, we have a property we're going through and fixing a lot of plumbing leaks. That was kind of the one big item that when we analyzed the property for purchase, we looked at it and it's just like that water bill is ridiculous. Probably 3 to 4 times what the water bill should be. And turns out we are going through unit by unit and fixing slab leaks. 82 units, we're probably going to bring out a jackhammer on about half of them. But fortunately, we knew about that before we purchased the property. But
That's good.
a little different for us. But well, cool. Well, hey, Jens, what's next for you?
Yeah, so really the syndications, we're actually in the middle of one right now, and we've done, a few others. We did one in Cleveland at the end of the year, and another one we're doing some stuff in Pennsylvania because I have a partner there. So really the syndications, because I like to have the opportunity to offer investments for limited partners that want to get into real estate, but don't have the time or the resource to go out and find their own deal. So that's one thing. We keep growing that. We do it very organically. We're just like friends and family, and there's a little bit of just connecting with people that way. And then, my coaching, I've actually done a lot of, I'm a certified high performance coach too. So I do, one of the wake up calls from this crash was we have so much potential inside of us that with some guidance that we can bring a lot of that out. So that's one of my big things now is coaching people, both how to invest in real estate, but also how to grow as humans and become more fulfilled and to see the bigger potential. So that's kind of what's next with me. I'm leaving my W-2 job. I have like a month and a half left.
Oh, congratulations.
So that's super exciting. I went to it's so funny because my boss has actually invested in me in some deals. So he knew this process all along. And we came up with some exit plan that suited both of us. So I've been part-time for a while, but now by the end of March, I'm out. So that's exciting.
That is extremely exciting. And incidentally, I've got 168 days. I had to think about the last digit for a second. 168 days until my W-2 job is done. So I'm going to be right behind you, and I'm super stoked as well. Hopefully, I can work out some part-time. I don't think it's going to work, but I'm active duty military. They usually don't allow people to do part-time. While you're active duty. So. But well, congratulations. I'm excited for you. And hopefully that opens up a lot of doors for you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. We're going to shift gears here and bring on our aspiring investor for this week. We have Alex Kamunyo, who's a 24-year-old engineer and entrepreneur. He recently graduated college in December 2017 and has since been working as a civil engineer. He's also made the goal to be financially free by age 28. And has built a real estate portfolio with 3 rental properties. He's completed 6 single-family rental flips and scaled multiple businesses that will ultimately give him the financial freedom he's looking for. He's also the host of Money Monopolizers podcast with 12,000 social media followers and over 40,000 downloads. So, Alex, that said, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate you bringing me on here. And I think this is an amazing format, what you got going on here with, the whole experienced investor and aspiring investor, man. It's a great format for people to learn and hear people from, another perspective, from an experienced perspective too.
I appreciate that. And part of us putting this format together was looking back and said, what was it that I needed, when I was first starting out, or what would have been perfect for me when I was first starting out? And the answer was being able to talk to somebody and ask them the questions that we wanted. And that's really how we came up with this, was trying to figure out what we would have wanted. But anyway, hey, Alex, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, man. So similar to Jens as well. I actually wasn't even born in this country either. I was born actually in Kenya, but I moved over here to the US when I was 1 year old. I'm 24 now, but that was obviously like 97. We moved to Louisiana and then ended up in Houston after Hurricane Katrina. And then after that, I kind of came to San Antonio in 2014 to go to college. And so I went to the University of Texas out here, and then, started studying civil engineering, graduated from college in 2017, and then started working. But really, my last semester of college, I had an internship at a civil engineering firm here in town. And I remember being there, and I was, at that time, I was 20 and then 21 during that year. And I started working, and, I was looking around And I'm just seeing so many people that were, so much older than me. And, at that point, I'm seeing people here that are 50, 60, 45. And some days we're in the office working late, and, it's 7 o'clock sometimes, maybe 8 o'clock sometimes if it's like a deadline or something that I'm trying to do.
Mhm.
And, I'm thinking I'm there, and there's still other people here in the office at the same time, like these people that are 45, 50, 60 years old. And I'm like,
Mhm.
man, I mean, I can see it's one thing for me to be here at 7 o'clock, right? Because when I go home, I'm just going home to just whatever, go watch Netflix or go, do
Yeah.
my homework or whatever the case may be, right? But when you go home, you have to go home, you have a wife, you have kids, you have
Mhm.
other real obligations that are going to be really, really important. And, you're missing out on a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
Just by being there. So I just started thinking, I was like, man, I do not want that for my life.
Mhm.
And so that was like summer of 2017. And then, I just started researching and reading everything I could to find out about just entrepreneurship and business. How can I retire early, essentially? And then I found out about financial freedom,
Mhm.
read Rich Dad Poor Dad, found Bigger Pockets, all of those things. And I said, okay, I'm gonna just finish out my degree, because I mean, at this point I was too deep
Might as
in.
well, right?
Yeah. So finished out my last semester, graduated in January 2018, started working. And then 2 weeks in, I said, okay, give myself 5 years and I'm gonna be out of here.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how I got into this whole, mentality of financial freedom. And I just started, studying real estate,
Mhm.
because I said that would be my primary vehicle to achieve it. And then, bought my first property, a single family house that summer. It
Mhm.
was a house hack. So it was a duplex, but it's like
Yeah.
a garage apartment. So I lived in a garage and rent out the main house, and just kept buying some more every year. My goal is to just buy one a year,
Mhm.
until really for the next 5 years. I said, oh, yeah, that'll be good enough. And I kind of realized, I was like, man, that's still really too slow. Like
Yeah.
one property, one duplex a year, that's really slow. I can do more. And just like what Jens was saying too, a lot of people don't realize you can unlock a lot more potential than, we have a lot more potential than we really think, right? I don't think
Yeah.
everyone uses their full potential. So started a podcast actually in summer of 2019, just because felt like I was learning so much. And I was like, man, other people, my age need to know this kind of stuff as well.
Mhm.
Because I feel like I found something that was life-changing. Even something as simple as being able to house hack and not pay rent is something that can change a lot of people's lives. So we started a podcast, me and my business partner, my
Mhm.
best friend, and that actually grew. And, from that, I was able to begin raising money to fund real estate deals and fund a lot of the flips that we're doing. Raised $250,000 last year off the podcast alone.
Wow.
And just, I was like, man, if I can do this for single families, why not do this for bigger deals?
Yeah.
That's when I said, okay, let me look into this apartment, multifamily apartment complexes, because I feel like, money is money. It doesn't matter where it's going to. So
Yeah.
that's
There's a lot of golden nuggets in what you talked about. I mean, first of all, I wish when I was 24 years old, I had the same realization as you. My dad, great person, I absolutely love him, but he worked a career where he was going to the same job every day for 30 plus years, and that's how I thought life was. I saw my dad do it, and it wasn't until I was much older than you that I kind of realized that, oh my gosh, I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to be that guy that's 10 years ahead of me. But first of all, good for you for doing that so early. And, when I was 30 something, I made the goal to start buying one single family property a year, and I got a couple under my belt, and I had the same realization you did was, okay, it's nice, but it's not life-changing nice.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's proof of concept, but,
Right.
hey, well, good for you. And, happy to see that your podcast has done so well. Don't think you mentioned the name yet, but Money Monopolizers, right?
That's right. It's
Yeah.
all about financial freedom.
Yep. Yep. And I've listened to a few episodes. I mean, we met a couple months ago, and I did check it out. Great podcast. Your Instagram, you got a lot of good stuff going on Instagram as well, as far as for people to learn financial freedom. So, good on you for all of that. So you kind of wove this in and out of your story the whole time, your big burning why. But if you could distill that down to, one or two sentences, what is your big burning why?
Yeah, for me, it's at the end of the day, it's freedom to live life on my own terms. Like that's it. At the end of the day, it's just if I want to go to, my kid's basketball game or football game or whatever the case may be in the middle of the day, I don't want to have to ask anybody, hey, can I get the day off so I can, go do this? I feel like, if we want to do what we want to do, then we should be able to. But of course, we need money to do that. Money buys freedom.
Yep. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, hey, Alex, we got Jens on the line here. What do you want to ask him?
Yeah, Jens, I really loved your story just based off everything you were saying too. And I really resonated it with what you were saying as well. Like I was saying earlier, I think, just having the opportunity to kind of talk to you and piggyback off of your experience is a great, great opportunity. So again, I appreciate you, Brian, for putting this together. But one thing that I always think about is, when talking with brokers, right, and trying to get in with brokers essentially and form that relationship with brokers. One thing that is always, I feel like a sort of a limiting factor in my mind is, why would a broker, send me one of their better deals, in the beginning, right? Like, obviously they have their pocket listings. They have the people that they're going to send them out to first, the people they believe that, and they know they can close. Why would they choose to send it out to me? And so it's like, how can I actually get a deal? It's kind of like catch-22 thing. So I guess my question to you is, how do you get brokers to actually start sending you their better deals before you actually have, experience? You can say, hey, I've closed this amount of deals.
Great question.
Yeah, well, that's an awesome question, Alex, and I get that a lot too. The first thing you can always ask the broker is that, what would it take for me to be the first person to get your next listing? And they may come up with an answer that you hadn't thought of, right? So you can ask them that. But then the other thing is, yes, if you don't have the experience, you haven't closed any deals, align yourself with somebody who has, right? Because if you're doing a bigger deal, you're going to need a sponsor anyway, somebody to, net worth, experience, depending on the size, right? So it's always that, the we card, right? So we have done X number of deals, we have closed deals here and there and whatever it may be. So just show that you are not an individual who don't have a deal. Show that you are a team who has the capability to close, that you actually done some deals, right? So that's why anybody that I work with, I always say, hey, if you put an LOI in, I'll be happy to be on that LOI. And if it's the right deal, I'll be happy to potentially partner with you, both from a net worth and experience and liquidity standpoint, right? So I think that's your best bet there, but also stay in touch with them, because, we're all humans. We all want that human connection, right? So you call up Joe Broker and he said, how's it going? And you make some notes about his kids and family and stuff. And then next time you call us, how was your, in a genuine way, but still just connect with them. And if you can, I'm not sure if you're looking at your local market, if you can go and have, coffee or lunch or something like with them, just meet them in person, because that also, they're going to remember you more as you took the time to actually meet with them. Yeah. So I think those strategies there are some of the ones that we've seen to be successful.
Okay.
I love that question. What would it take for me to be your first call? I think that's mind blown is what I'm thinking right now. I mean, it's so simple, but you get into exactly what the broker is looking for and what his criteria is. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and I never really even thought of that in that sense too. That's that's really practical and it's really simple. I mean, it's just honestly just asking the question, because if you don't ask, you'll never know. So
yeah, that's right. You can always use that in any other conversation. You can say, what would it take for X to happen? Just ask the person, because too often we make assumptions about what the other person's intentions and motivations are, but quite often we are wrong, even with our, close family, right? So yeah, it's that open dialogue.
And I think, just thinking out loud here, that also plants the seed with that person that you want to be the first call. So it's something that's going to start working on their minds. Like, okay, if you do this, you will be my first call, but at the same time, like I said, they're going to start thinking about, hey, he wants to be the first call. And, maybe we need to get something else that comes up. They're reminded of that question somehow. And like, oh yeah, Alex wanted to be my first call. Maybe I'll call him.
And so I think that's a really good point too, because at that point, I think you're just setting yourself apart from everybody else, which is really the key. So let's say then, I guess in the case where, you do actually get them to send you, deals first, how would you say, or how would, y'all go about as far as they're sending you deals, you're analyzing them, you're underwriting them, and, they're not working for you, or the numbers aren't working, but you don't necessarily want to just keep turning all their things down, right? Because then they're gonna like, okay, this person's actually a tire kicker, right? They're not actually someone that can close a deal. So how because you want them to continue to take you seriously. How do you go about just kind of rejecting, I guess, or telling them, hey, this deal won't work for me, this particular deal in that sense?
Yeah, and it depends. If you're just on their mailing list that they send, to 1,000 people, I don't really send any responses. But if they specifically, and I got a broker sent me a couple of deals yesterday, I think, or the day before here locally that he's working on. I said, well, I really appreciate that. Right now, I'm in the middle of some other deals, so I can't actually do it right now. So that was my honest answer to him. But if the deal doesn't make sense to you, you can kind of explain and say, hey, based upon my underwriting, here are the criteria, this is what I'm looking for. This deal can do X. It's not quite what it needs to be. You can always ask, is there any, is the seller's pretty set on this price? Is there any, negotiation possible there? It's kind of tough, right? Because the broker's job is to get the highest price for his seller. And you as the buyer is to get the lowest price, right? So kind of come to some sort of compromise there. But I mean, I think it's fair. Don't ever say it in a negative way. Just be honest and say, hey, I was looking for 8% cash on cash. This is more like a 3%. It's not quite going to work with me. Do you have anything else that may cash flow a little bit better or something?
Yeah. And I'm not the acquisitions guy for our company anymore, but at the very beginning, I was actively doing the exact same thing. I remember one of the first conversations I had with a particular broker. They sent me a deal and I looked at it and I remember the numbers. Okay. I really remember the numbers. 6.4 was what they said was the asking price, $6.4 million. And I underwrote it and I kept on, going over and over and over again. And I finally called the broker and I'm like, hey, look, am I missing something? Because I mean, you're saying 6.4. I don't see this as anything over 5.4. And the broker just laughed, and it was like, I'm like, what do you mean? Why are you laughing? They're like, we don't think it's anywhere near 6.4 either, but that's what the seller wants to sell it at, and it was just like, oh my gosh, it was a learning experience for me, but we kept on talking about it. And at the end of that conversation, that broker sent me 2 more properties. And it was just that feedback that I gave him. And it turned back that my feedback was accurate. It was one of the first properties that I had underwritten with this group and I was still new to the game, but it ended up being a mental breakthrough as well. Like brokers, they're playing the middleman. That's really what they are. They're playing the middleman. So if you come to them and you're like, hey, this doesn't work at 6.4, incidentally, that property, that owner ended up refinancing because he didn't get the price he wanted. And that's pie in the sky price. But yeah, I love what you said, Jens. I mean, and I agree wholeheartedly. Give the broker feedback, be honest with them, tell them.
I feel like that's a really good point, because I remember also I was listening to, I think, Michael Blanc's podcast too. And one thing that he mentions too is that, when a broker is sending you a deal and it's not going to work, he says, I mean, it's the same concept. Give them feedback as to why, as opposed to just saying, oh, it won't work. Give them feedback. So one thing he said to do specifically is do a 5-minute Loom video going through your, analysis, where they can see your face on the screen, and, you record a video of your screen going through your analysis and showing them, hey, this is this cap rate, or at this cap rate, this asking price, and this NOI, it's not going to work. So he says, they'll appreciate that. So, because it's like extra value than most people will provide. So that's a good point. So then, as far as, whenever you're actually getting into deals, one thing that I always try to do is just continue to take action, because I know that's probably the best way to learn, because we don't want to get an analysis paralysis and just be analyzing deals all day and never doing anything, right? Because, you can convince yourself that you're doing something when you're just analyzing deals. So one thing I always try to do is continue to take action. But I feel like with apartments, it's a lot different, because, with dealing with these brokers, I just submitted my first LOI like last week on a deal. And the reason we did it was because we kind of just said, okay, we just need to take action and learn the next step. We don't expect to get this deal at all, but we're going to learn something from submitting an LOI that we haven't learned before, because we've never submitted an LOI before. And now we get 2 steps further than we have ever. But I know at the same time, there's still someone else on the opposite end of the table that has to look at that LOI. And even if you don't think you're going to get it, there's someone that's like analyzing this is like, hey, why do can you actually close, and like all these kind of things. So do you think it's the right approach to just, if I was to just continue to submit LOIs on deals that I don't necessarily believe I can, maybe we submit at our price, but if it's a deal I don't necessarily believe we're going to be able to get or close, is that a right approach, or am I wasting people's time by doing that?
If you're way off the price, and I mean, I always kind of ask the broker first. Brian was saying it was 6.5 and he thought it was be a 5.5 million deal. Maybe call the broker and said, hey, I'm pretty far apart. Is there any value in adding submitting an LOI now, or am I just wasting everybody's time, right? Because if you're way too far off and the broker's going to say, no, we already have offers that are much closer to the asking price, then maybe you are wasting your time, right? So I would have that initial conversation if you feel like you're competitive, you may be in $100,000 from what other people are, then it's probably worth it, because maybe they'll go for, best and final or something to that effect, right? So, but if you're way off, I don't know if it's valuable. I don't know if Brian has anything to add to that.
I struggle with that question. I really, really do. My first offer, and I can't even call it an offer, was an email with a number. I'll give you 3.1 million for it. And I was way underneath. But what that did for me is it got me out of my comfort zone. Did I waste the broker's time with that email? Maybe 30 seconds, because they literally wrote me an email that says, thanks, we'll pass. I mean, so I wasted about 15 seconds of their time, and it was a waste of time. But had I continued, and here's the other edge of the sword, had I continued to put out bogus numbers like that, they would have stopped. They probably blocked me, and so they never see another email from me, never send me another deal. So if you do it too frequently, it could have negative effects, on your ability to get stuff. But I mean, end of the day, I like what Jens said, give them a phone call and say, am I wasting time by putting this LOI in? On the flip side, I think you also hit the nail on the head, Alex. I mean, sometimes you need to put that offer in to learn. I see both sides of the coin, and Alex, I did what you did. I put a couple of offers in knowing that I would never get the property, and knowing that I'd have a hard time even coming up with the money to purchase the property, partially for the learning experience and partially to keep myself out of my comfort zone, because that's what I needed to do. And I looked at the risk. I knew what the risk was. And I thought, okay, at least I'm putting offers out. At least I'm pushing the ball down the court. And
Right.
that was my philosophy. But I definitely see both sides of the coin.
I love that. I love that. And that's how I felt too after we submitted that LOI, because it forced me to now I got to start looking at finding property managers. So now I start learning, okay, what goes into this process, trying to find out who else I need on this team in this certain market. And so I met people in other cities that are now valuable connections to me, just by doing that, like for that specific deals in Dallas. And now I know a guy in Dallas that was, willing to be more of a boots on the ground kind of guy. So you get stuff out of that, even if you don't, close the deal, but you definitely get further. So, but yeah, so we always hear kind of like those rules of thumbs of, how many LOIs and how many offers you need to be making in order to close deals. I've been hearing it a lot, people saying 10 LOIs a week, or like 10 offers a week or something, in order to, once you do 100, you might close one deal. So in your experience, for both of y'all, how many LOIs, should someone be submitting on a regular basis in order to close a deal, as a rule of thumb?
Yeah, and I think I have a different take on that. And this is maybe my unique partnership that I have, that I'm usually not the guy who puts out the offers. I have a partner who has created some amazing relationship with brokers. So we're not in that numbers game of submitting as many as possible. We're in a much more strategic, hey, here's a deal that makes sense that a broker is sharing with us, maybe like off market. I mean, case in point, we closed a $10 million deal in Cleveland in the fall. And it was on the market early in 2020. The seller took it off. We, as our group, got the first look at that deal in the summer when it came back on, and there was no competitive bid process. Nobody else even saw it. So that's a unique opportunity, a situation to be in. So I have not played that game of submitting a ton of LOIs to see what would stick, right? So it's been much more targeted for me. I know, see, all kinds of things out there. I would be much more like, I would rather underwrite the deals and only submit LOIs in something I feel like, okay, this actually makes sense, versus sending out 100 of them. So maybe Brian has a different perspective, but that's been my experience.
How many would you have to underwrite?
that depends on how your deal flow, right? And your market. If you're in a Dallas, there's probably a lot of deals that comes on the market there, right? So, and get efficient and effective at that. So it doesn't take you 2 days to underwrite a deal, right? You plug the numbers in, and 5 minutes later you can see, oh, here's my price, and what's the listing price, and are we far apart or not, right?
I tend to agree with Jens on that one. Be more focused. I mean, just because you're putting 10 offers out a week, you can be more focused. And the time it takes to write up an LOI, it does take time to write up an LOI. And if you know you have no chance, don't waste your time with the LOI. I like what he said about being more focused. I mean, maybe your goal shouldn't be LOIs per week. Maybe your goal should be, I'm going to analyze this many deals per week. Yeah. And if you can constantly analyze, 8 or 10 or 15 deals a week, whatever your number is, you have a threshold where you get to an LOI, so you're analyzing the deal, you're picking up the phone, you're calling the broker, you're like, hey, this is where I'm at on price right now. What do you think? And if they say you're in the ballpark, then you put the LOI in. And that's typically how we operate. I think up front, I was more along the lines, like 2 years ago, I was more along the lines of throwing out LOIs to see if they stick. But, I just realized on the flip side, at the front, I didn't have a lot of experience. So would I do things differently without the experience? Because, I mean, once again, thinking out loud, we've got 500 units and we've proven our ability to close. So does that change the strategy? I don't think it does. I think the best answer is still, set your goal on how many properties you're going to analyze in a given week. And once they meet a certain criteria, you're talking with the broker, you're building the relationship. And once you're close to that strike price and you think you have a solid chance, that's where the LOI goes out.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. I like that because it reminds me of kind of like setting process goals versus objective goals, right? Yeah. Instead of, oh, my goal is to lose 20 pounds. My goal is to go to the gym 5 days a week. Or in this case, instead of to close one deal, my goal is to underwrite 10 deals per week. So I love that. I think that's a really practical approach.
Yeah. So anyway, it's kind of how we ended up doing things. And I think it was just because of the trial in the air when we realized that putting in an LOI on a property we had no business offering on didn't do anybody any good. We weren't going to get the property. So we want to have a pretty good idea that LOI is going to get signed if we submit it, at least a certain percentage or a threshold chance that this is going to get signed. But anyway, we're about out of time, guys. I think this has been an amazing conversation. I love it. Love what we've been able to talk about. Alex, I love the action that you've taken already. You've definitely demonstrated that you're going to put in the effort and action. Jens, you bring a lot of experience to the table, and I appreciate your guys' time today.
Absolutely. It's been a lot of fun. And Alex, if you need anything, you're welcome to reach out to me anytime. I love to talk. So
we got one question for each of you to finish everything up. How can listeners learn more about you? Jens, you go first.
Yeah, so they can go to my website, opendoorscapital.com. And if anybody wants to get on a free call, I love to talk. I've had like hundreds of just calls with people, either investors or potential coaching students. They can go to opendoorscapital.com/call and schedule a free call with me there. So that's my offer.
All right, opendoorscapital.com. And if you're listening, that's going to be a hyperlink is going to be in the show notes. So encourage you to take advantage of it. Just go to the show notes, swipe, tap, and you'll go to the website. Alex, same question for you.
I would definitely want y'all to check out my podcast as well, Money Monopolizers podcast. Like you said, we talk a lot about financial freedom on there, and that's probably the best way you can get in touch with me is through the podcast in terms of, going to the Instagram page and then messaging me on Instagram as well. So,
yep. And incidentally, that's how we set this up was via Instagram Messenger, and he's pretty quick to respond. So, hit him up there. Like I said, it is a good podcast. I've listened to a couple of episodes myself. It's a great podcast. He's got a lot of good content on Instagram. So definitely check that out. So Alex, we're going to put a link to the podcast in the show notes, and we're also going to put a link to your Instagram profile as well.
Sounds good.
All right. Hey, thanks again, guys. And I appreciate your time today.
Yes,
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.